Hello, welcome back to the Trail project. We're going to get straight into it today with the drive shafts that connect the transmission to the axles. Because you remember last time we did front and rear axle. So we're going to be building the drive shafts today and hopefully getting some links onto the axles. So these drive shafts are quite simple. So you've got a castellated end, you've got this end that actually attaches to the pinion that comes out of the axles. And you have the actual drive shaft itself, that's the splined section, and then you have the female end, so that's the male end, that's the female end. I'm not going to go into detail about that. You get this end, and you've got the ball, this is the joint that moves around. So what you want to do, is you want to put this silver part in, so that slides in, and you slide that into the castellated part. Slide the small pin into it like that, and then you have this capture ring just here, and you can see the pin in there just about. You want to slide that over and that captures that pin and stops it coming out like that, so there's no way that pin can come out now. It's different to using a grub screw. Grub screws can tend to strip out, and then you put the castellated end into that part, the flanged part of the drive shaft. That will just slide in, and then you have a screw which goes all the way down there, all the way to the bottom, which attaches this joint to that part of the drive shaft. And you do need a bit of Loctite on there, so I've got some. Axial do supply their own thread lock, but being as this is open, I'll use this anyway. So that's one end done. You can see that universal joint there that allows movement of the suspension, and it stops the drive shafts from binding up. So it's different to the dog bone sort of setup. That's more of a CV universal joint setup. So the other side is basically the same. You have the ball end, place that in, put that end over so you can see through both sides. You put the little pin through, then you put the capture ring on like that. That goes into the castellated end of the drive shaft. Then put a bit of Loctite onto the screw. That, and then you put that all the way through the drive shaft into the hole and screw it up. There we go. That's that done. And then all it says is that you slide these together. Now these do have, you're probably not going to be able to see this because it's very small, but these have little markings on them, just little plastic markings on both ends of the drive shaft, and they're meant to line up when you slide it together like that. And that is one completed drive shaft. So it's obviously extendable, just so there's a bit of movement in it, and it's got a lot of movement either side as well. Very easy. So I'm going to quickly do the other one. So I did just record a little bit there building the other axle, but it seemed to not record, so I'm just going to let you know now. The plan is to keep these axles as they are, because apparently they're very tough to begin with anyway. They're quite tough axles, quite durable. But the one weakness is that the centre of that part, the splined part, is hollow. So when the whole drive line is under a lot of torque, these tend to compress on themselves and twist and break. So what you can do is you can put a bit of bar down there, a bit of metal, mild steel bar or whatever, and that will stop the compression of that tube. So if these axles start to show signs of that, I'll get some, some bar, some little metal bar, put it in the middle, and it should be fine. But yeah, so these are going to stay stock, and I'm going to keep these axles for as long as I can. These drive shafts, sorry. Simply because I want a weakness in the system anyway. If I'm going to be upgrading the transmission, if it breaks, and the axles with metal gears or with heavy duty gears, you want some sort of weakness in the drive line, just something like this drive shaft, because it's cheap and it's easy to fix and replace. So we are setting up the links, and it looks like it's going to be a 4-link suspension setup, and these are going to be the upper links, plastic. So they've got a lot of bend to them, which Helps when you're crashing and bashing around because these bend rather than snapping any of the components. But obviously if they start to bend and they're permanently bent after a lot of use, then I'll replace them with aluminium ones. But the first job is to fit the drive shaft. Because these are going to be facing downwards, you want the splined part to be downwards, and you want this part to be facing up, because if you've got it switched round, a lot of mud and water is going to go into this end and build up in here, which you don't want. And there's a little hole in there, and there's obviously a hole and a thread in there, and that's held in with a grub screw with a post on the end, and that post goes through the hole just there. Now I had a lot of trouble lining this up with the front one, so hopefully the rear is going to be a bit easier. So put that in there. I'm going to put a bit of Loctite on there just so that that screw doesn't back out. So that's that threaded in. And there we go. So that's that part done. Now the links. So we have these little plastic ball ends that go into the end of the links. So again, plastic, it bends and it stops stuff breaking in the suspension, but eventually it is just going to permanently bend and not go back to the same shape. So at that stage we will replace stuff, but for now it should be fine. That's that one. There. On there. And then these are held onto that brace there by one long bolt and a nylock nut. So obviously with a nylock nut you don't have to use Loctite, because the actual nylock part, the little rubber washer part, grips onto the thread. You don't have to worry about it backing off like that. Now you do have to hold that bolt with a pair of pliers because you can't get the actual wrench in there. There we go. And they're still free to move, as is the drive shaft. So that's one done, and I've also gone and done the front as well. So the next step is to set up the aluminium lower links. Luckily these lower links are all aluminium, so they slide across rocks and various stuff easier, and they're all the same size. They're all 6 by 98, so you don't have to worry about using a specific type, just use 2 of them. And I'm going to assemble one front and one rear because they're slightly different, and then I'll do those off camera. So the first step is these big long grub screws. We'll thread those into the plastic eyelets first. So the easiest way to do that is to put some sort of screwdriver or something through the eyelet and then screw the grub screw in. You'll see why in a minute, why it's best to do this first. You'll feel it reach the end about there. And then what we'll do is we'll snap in the little plastic ball end like that, and then we'll screw that end into there, because if you screw this grub screw into the aluminium first, it will just thread its way all the way in, and then you'll have a real difficulty getting it back out, and you won't be able to thread this end on first. So this way you can just use that plastic eyelet to thread it in like that, and then you know you're sorted. So we shall do the other end. So you put the eyelet on the end of a screwdriver or whatever, thread the grub screw in first, click that into place, and then thread it into the end of the link. So that's one link done. Now that's the rear link. The front one is slightly different in that it has a tiny little aluminium spacer just for extra servo clearance, so it says. Thread the grub screw in, the plastic ball in, and then thread that into the end of the link. Now this is the one where the spacer goes in. Now I don't think it matters which side you go, but in the instructions it says to put the spacer side where those numbers are there, where it's got the measurements. I don't think it matters, but we'll do it anyway. We'll just go by the instructions. So that spacer goes on there, and that twists into that end. So that's both bottom links, one for the front, which is that one, and one for the rear. So that's one side done. So I'm going to quickly do the other side, and that'll be it for this episode, I think. So there we go, just a quick episode today. Got the drive shafts done and the links. I have just mocked these bottom links in just so I don't lose them with the screws. I will need to take them back out to put the shocks on because the shocks go to the same mounting point. But yeah, that's it for today. Next episode will be the shocks, transmission, and I think the servo as well. So a bit of a packed episode next time. I didn't have a lot of time today, hence why I've just done links and the drive shafts. So yeah, other than that, thank you very much for watching. If you want to check out the Facebook and Twitter pages, links down below in the description box, and I shall see you next time on RC Projects. Bye.